Let's start with the evolution of the cloud. You've been at the cutting edge, the forefront. Where have we been? Where are we now? Where are we going?
Sure. So first, it's great to be out in the public. Quite often we work behind the scenes with many of you and our customers to enable their success. So it's fun for me to get out and be with all of you. We see the cloud market, it's kind of in its third wave. And I want to explain a little bit about that because I think it's really important. I heard some of the public cloud's inevitable. Love to hear that. But I want to give a little bit of the foundation for why we believe what we believe. So first wave was SaaS. So if you remember, roughly 15, 20 years ago, your relationship with cloud was, hey, we really want a capability for CRM or HR, and you would get this packaged software, and the relationship with that vendor was, hey, A/B testing, you would use it, they would change features, but you kind of got the features that everybody got, right? Because that's how you build successful SaaS. Well, after a while, and after you found those functions that could be moved to SaaS, you looked at IaaS. You said, well, I still have some core functions that I'm running, and I want the storage, network, and compute primitives to run this really efficiently and effectively myself. Maybe I could just rent some of the spare capacity that others have since they're building out these digital businesses, and hey, they've got some data center capacity left over, and so you probably started renting compute, network, storage from others. Well, that's okay. Creates a lot of opportunity, right? A lot of VM shapes, a lot of compute, network, storage primitives, but it feels pretty overwhelming. And now we're in the third wave of cloud, and I heard a little bit about this from the prior panel, which is moving into kind of this solutions era and how you're creating differentiated value for yourselves, your company, with solutions. And what we see this as, this third wave, is this platform era. So you've been down the SaaS path, and you've got these functions that are operating in SaaS. You've probably optimized, or you're optimizing as much as you can with renting capacity from others. But the thing that you really want is growth, right? And in order to drive growth, that requires closeness to customers. That requires probably new experiences. It requires real time versus batch. These are complicated things to wedge back into a business that's probably been running. In some cases, we work with customers who have been around for 150 years. In some cases, 15 or 20. But in all cases, they have this foundation that they've already established. And they're thinking about, how do I create these platforms that can abstract compute, abstract the storage, or platforms that they can build for others that allow them, their customers, to interact in a new way. I'll give you an example. Iron Mountain. Who's familiar with Iron Mountain in the room? Right? Many of you, right? I would say most of you have physical archives with Iron Mountain, right? So do we. Well, Iron Mountain, about 3-4 years ago, we had a conversation that started like, what's the future of your business? They said, well, physical archives should be digital assets. And we want to build a platform that can add value to our business and then create our own interaction with our customers, our own marketplace, our own experiences, right? And kind of disintermediate all the people that are in between. Cool. How are we going to do that? That's really hard. Well, it turns out that there were some technologies that we had worked on at Google. For example, non-destructive ways of taking books. If you remember Google Books and kind of making the world's information available from ancient texts all the way to more recent books, it's kind of hard to take physical assets and not destroy them in the process of getting them to digital. So that's one piece. You have optical character recognition and kind of more of the AI, the cool fun, like, hey, can we scan this and turn it into an asset? Can we do metadata tagging on the fly? That stuff's all real cool. But then there were also real concerns around, well, how do we deploy it? How do we make it available? How do we make it reliable? And pretty soon they're building a platform. And we really see this as this next wave, this next 5-7 years. Most, if not all of you, are already building or will build your own platforms to create that type of an experience for your customers. And you will have to deal with all of these concerns that maybe the SaaS providers have been doing behind the scenes for a while, or maybe you've been doing for your own kind of core workloads, but you're going to extend it. It's going to get more complex. You're going to want it to move from kind of, hey, we can update our view of the market every 30 hours or every 17 hours to every 8 minutes. That necessitates kind of a different way of looking at problems. And so we really see, looking forward, really see this era of platform. And honestly, that's why I even have a job. That's why we built this team 4 or 5 years ago, is because we built a few platforms at Google. 1 or 2. You may have heard of a couple of them. But everything from application development to video to geo to gaming recently in Stadia. It turns out that when you want to deliver 4K video at 60 frames per second over a 30 megabit per second link, you have to do some unusual and weird things in your acceleration, in your core infrastructure. But that also has really interesting potential benefits for people who want to deliver content over a network to their customers. So any of you that might be in a media business and you want to deliver high quality experiences, and now your customers expect 4K video and over shaky cellular links, which is totally unreasonable, but I have 2 teenage daughters, and so I live in the world of unreasonable. We can take some of this experience and bring it to customers, but we didn't have a bridge. And so the CTO team that I lead, we went and hired people who have deployed kind of these platforms and these services at scale in the market, and this everywhere from Blackstone, Intuit, Pixar, Nat Geo, JP Morgan, VMware. We've combined them with our internal engineering team. And we have kind of unleashed this CTO collective into the top 150 customers and brands that we see on the market that are really trying to do cool and interesting things. And this is the new normal, I think. This is this collaborative innovation model where you kind of take the best of knowledge of your industry, because we've typically been horizontal technology providers. Right? We understand how to provide horizontal technology. And now we're learning a lot more, both from these hires externally, but also from you. And then we're able to serve you better in building out these platforms. And I think that's what's happening in cloud now, platforms.
Platforms, and as you mentioned, collaboration.
Yes.
And collaboration not just within CTOs of previous businesses and getting inside the clients to be not only horizontal but vertically provided, but also working with frenemies, working with other cloud providers. It's a multi-cloud world out there. How is this transpiring to ensure that it's best in practice, that you're able to serve the clients in the best possible way?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think Gartner, who covers a little bit of the cloud market, Gartner recently polled a bunch of CIOs and said, I think roughly 81% you're already consuming multiple public clouds. Now, maybe it's some dev test, maybe it's core workloads, it's a mixed bag. But most of you, if not all of you, are or will shortly be using multiple clouds. So it's a reality. In the CTO office at Google, this is my experience as well. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we have seen kind of this move to, and many different rationales for this, but we've seen this move to multi-cloud, starting with hybrid usually, and then thinking more about this multi-cloud world. It's still early days for multi-cloud, but definitely a predominant pattern emerging. We've seen this in kind of a couple different shapes. So first shape is disaster recovery, continuity of operations, regulatory requirements. It turns out that you need to actually have some probably physical separation of the location of your workloads, not just like in different racks in the same building or within the same blast radius. For those of you that have to deal with extreme availability, that requires potentially doing disaster recovery against multiple cloud providers, because maybe you can't get what you need in that architecture from just one. And so we've seen customers starting to move in disaster recovery COOP scenarios, continuity of operations scenarios, seen them moving into multi-cloud and experimenting there. Application modernization, right? So if you're running VM-based applications, one of the things that you're gonna kind of want to do after you've maybe moved the VMs to cloud and you've maybe not realized all the lift and shift savings that I think 10 years ago people were touting, if you move to the cloud, you're gonna save a whole lot of money by moving your applications and services there. And I think many, if not most of you, may have discovered something very sad along the way, which is when you move things from one place to another, it doesn't necessarily save you a lot of money, or worse, it doesn't enable new experiences for your customers, so it's actually not leading to the thing that you're probably talking the most about as leaders in your boardroom and as peers, CEO, CFO, CTO, CIO, is how do we create this new breakthrough experience and beat the people down the street, right, and create competitive advantage. And that application modernization, the portability, we really see that as the second big pattern for kind of driving multi-cloud. Third, and this is more media and industries like this, is kind of this burst out mode. So we really, we're running a pretty highly utilized set of infrastructure right now. But every once in a while, we need to surge. And so this may be rendering for games or movies or the rest. And that's actually been a very early pattern for hybrid and multi-cloud, kind of like sending these rendering jobs out and farming them out, getting the scale and then pulling them back down again.
Those clearly so much that you're being asked of by your clients. And I like the way that you said, to combat the latest competitor down the street to win, it's not just the CIO or the CTO, it's the CEO, it's other executives within the businesses. How are you expanding outside of the C-suite in terms of your conversations?
Yeah, so I've been in technology, so I spent the first 20 years in technology in the enterprise. And aerospace, manufacturing, public sector, places that have like long capital cycles. And some of my experience early on was the CEO would say something like, hey, guess what? You have 50% of your budget next year, make something happen. Or, we have to run this finite element model, and we have to run it 50 times faster, and you have to make that happen in the next 18 months. Good luck, we're counting on you. That's a very emotional moment. I mean, I don't know if any of you share this experience, but after you choke down, okay, I don't have a clear line of sight to this. I can make this happen because I can do this. We can do this. It felt a little bit like we were sent off on a mission and come back and tell us the results. And what we've seen in the CTO office, and this really kind of cool new emergent pattern is, and I think that there's two causes for it, and I'll articulate those in a moment. What we're seeing is CEOs and CFOs and CTOs and CIOs and CMOs and kind of lines of business, some of these separations aren't as clear as they used to be, and it's becoming a little bit more of a team sport. In fact, one of the things we try to do a lot is kind of break those barriers down, because at Google, we don't run in these kind of very strict hierarchical functional. We probably know a little bit about us. We've been around for a while, and we've talked about some things publicly in terms of how we work, right? There are books and stuff, if you're interested. But the way I think about it, having come to Google 5 years ago, is we kind of work as these teams, these kind of self-forming teams around really, really hard problems. And we're taking the same model, and we're exposing it to our customers that we work with. And I have seen literally 14 registered officers of a very large public company on the floor mapping out the architecture for this new service that they wanted to create, because the CEO is deeply involved, the CFO deeply involved, the CIO deeply involved, and not just in the here are my requirements, go figure out the vendor strategy, go figure out how this stuff works, but actually more of a I want to like understand how it works, and I want to be really close to the problem solving and the creativity. Like, if we can't work together, what's the chances that our lines of business and our internal IT teams are going to work together? So you have to set the agenda at the top, and they want to expose that to their teams, right? And I think all of us want to do creative, collaborative work. It's so much more fun than being told to do something and then like having to come back with an answer. And so our experience in the CTO office is, this kind of pattern is emerging. And we have seen we've seen as much technology is an important part of it. Actually, just the way that cloud providers show up and the way that your cloud providers show up, your partners, that should be different. And I think that all of you should have an expectation of that type of relationship, not only with kind of the hey, we've got this challenge. What's your compute shape look like? Can you give me 12 terabyte certified VMs for SAP? Yes. Are you really sure you want that? Because those are pretty expensive. They're very bespoke for very and if you do, great. We know how to do that. But the first thing we always ask, and it's a little frustrating, honestly, for our customers that we work with. It can be a little frustrating, and they say, "Can't you just tell me the answer?" And I say, "We will not give you an answer." Yet, right? But it's more of a why. Like, what's really happening here? I've had a CEO lean forward. I'm typically the person they bring in at the end of the day, in the day-long meetings, and we've run through the product portfolio and the rest, and then I'm the person at the end that causes chaos. And I will say something like, "Hey, we were just shopping at your store last night, and we took a phone and we duct taped it to a shopping cart. And we ran a localized version of TensorFlow and MLKit, and we were able to characterize, produce in your store on the go. And if spoilage is like a really big deal for a grocer, like, how could you extend that concept and kind of move out from that and say, could we start to grab our knowledge of our supply chain and the spoilage problem a little bit just by using tools that are readily available? It's not going to solve the production problem. This is not now we've got this new thing that we can productionize a week from now. But it starts a conversation that is very different. And I've had the CEO, lean forward and say, I want to learn about this. Like, I want to know about this. This is the kind of thing I need to be able to, comprehend, drive in the agenda. And that is very, very different than, when I was, just before coming to Google 5-7 years ago, when it was more of the CEO would say, well, we need 200 basis points. What do you got?
So apart from duct taping phones onto trolleys in supermarkets.
Just to be clear, we do things that are more robust than that. But
I love that though. But that's so innovative. That's so thinking outside the box. And therefore, where is the innovation you're seeing right now in terms of cloud from a broader perspective?
Yeah. So there are a couple things that are coming. And I mentioned one about the platform. You've had an entire day, an entire agenda. And I think what's interesting about it is that they're all kind of platform topics. You have data, you have security, identity, you have AI. These are all platform level topics. And so one of the things that we're investing a lot in right now is trying to figure out where all of you may be in a platform journey and giving you like the right shape of IT at the right moment for the right place that you are. Because I bet if I was to poll this room, that there would actually be pretty dissimilar strategies amongst all of you. Maybe we'd see some clusters, but you all have very specific things that you're trying to accomplish in your market, and you're all trying to gain competitive advantage. And so this platform level development, this platform level, so you need identity that moves across, whether you're running Active Directory or, other forms of, kind of centralized IT, identity management, and extending it out into all your application services. You need an identity platform. You also need to think about security and your regulators. For those of you in financial services, I was listening to the last panel. Like I'm living that dream. I was just down at the Fed, a week.
Lucky you.
Yeah, a week and a half ago. So very topical. But the expectation and where we're spending a lot of time and effort right now as Google is identity and privacy capabilities that match what you need. Whether that's as a consumer, right? So we just talked about like fine-grained controls where you can decide how long we store, if we store anything at all. You can run an incognito mode baked into your applications. That type of development that we're doing on the consumer side, we're also thinking about, and we're externalizing forms of this so that you, building your own platform, can bring some of those same shapes to your applications and services. So, again, just hammering on that, this is the age of the platform. It really has to match the shape and the size of where you are. And I would suggest that you should demand from Google and anybody else who wants to be your cloud provider that this platform level engagement, this tie between what they're offering, what we're offering, and where you are in your journey should be strategic, should be crystal clear, should be tailored for you, because this is not the SaaS era where we're only going to sell what everybody wants and you kind of only operate at the level of all of your peers, right? This is the era of competitive advantage, platforms built by you, empowered by your partners.
How is your CTO office going to develop then? How do you envisage it?
It's a really great question. I've been talking. So I work for our CEO, and that's something that he and I are talking a lot about right now. Because in the first wave of the CTO office, what was really important is that we had people from outside of Google to blend our experience and give us this kind of empathy across every industry that you could imagine, right? So I came in with industrial and manufacturing and aerospace and public sector, and so we brought in people for media, healthcare, retail, financial services, so we baked that in, and we're kind of figuring that out. One of the things that we've heard a lot from our customers right now is catalyzing the front end, like the duct tape version of kind of like, how do we even envision what new could look like? Because in a lot of ways, you don't even know how to ask the question sometimes. I don't know how to ask the question sometimes for a future that I don't understand. I love the comment about crystal balls are always foggy. I don't think crystal balls are very useful. I think what's useful is a system, an early warning system that can give you as much time as possible to detect trends. This is kind of what a CTO office does at Google for our R&D. Detect these trends and then bring them back to our engineering team. And so in order to do that effectively, we have to give all of you something to at least start with. Once we get through this kind of design thinking and we're at the point now, let's go do something. Like let's try to narrow the box down. And so we in the CTO office are probably going to add skills over the next 18, 24 months where we're able to catalyze the front end of that with you collaboratively very quickly.
there's a duct taping future, clearly.
Yes.
Well, Grannis, 20 minutes just flew by. I can't believe it went so quickly. You're clearly going to be on the panel, the rota, I think, going forward. What a wonderful speaker. We thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
From Google.
Pleasure.